Are you experiencing back pain that you can't get rid of? Getting migraines, vertigo, having trouble sleeping, and/or brain fog? Do you feel like your medical doctor doesn't understand your condition? Blair Chiropractic might be the solution you've been looking for. If you've ever been skeptical about this, the two doctors you're about to listen to were even more skeptical than you were when they looked into chiropractic work. But fear not. Get expert guidance from the blonde and the bald, Doctors Beth Bagley and Frederick Schurger. These two doctors have extensive experience beyond the healthcare realm and bringing unique vision and healing to their patients. What do you have when you get a biological analyst and an engineer together? Find out right here on another episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Welcome your hosts, Doctors Bagley and Schurger.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Blonde and the Bald podcast. I am Dr. Frederick Schurger.
And I am Dr. Beth Bagley. Welcome.
How have you been?
I have. It's a holiday week. I know this is going to come out some weeks later, but this was the 4th of July. So trying to pile all of the patients into 2 days in my office was quite fun.
It was. And I am in the same boat, except I lost power this past weekend.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah. So I was trying to, everyone who does math will appreciate this joke, but I decided I was going to see patients for about an hour starting at 9:00 on Thursday morning. Mm-hmm. So, because that would mean I could actually leave the office by noon. Again, do the math, have some fun with that. That's when the storm came in because we were going to go head out of town for the weekend. The storm comes in like a derecho, and it's a full-on derecho in Springfield. I was driving back to meet up with a patient who never made it. You know, she's like, nope, I'm going home to check on the kids. But I make it back to the office. I get drenched walking in by the time I get here, but I almost couldn't make it. I was worried that there was a tornado coming through here. So it was bad.
And you don't have a basement in your office, do you?
We do, but it was,
we don't here.
I sort of looked and I had questions, but it calmed down but honestly, by the time I got to the office, the worst of it was really over. But we lost power. We were out of power till
in the office or at home?
At home. The office had power.
See, I would have just slept at the office.
I thought about seeing patients, and I was just so exhausted that I'm like, nope, I need this time to decompress so that I'm ready for patients, and ended up with 3 new patients in 2 days, and got them all adjusted today. And it was a good day. It was a very good day. We may talk about these cases at another time, but it's nice to camp at home, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can see that, except I really like air conditioning, like a lot.
Yes. And yes. And I really sleep. I get much better sleep, and I can do harder workouts when I've had some air conditioning.
We're so spoiled because if you think about really like our parents and our grandparents, right? Like no air conditioning. They grew up with no air conditioning.
And the funny thing is I was chatting with my dad, and this has been when I was in my 20s, I didn't run the air conditioner. In fact, oftentimes I'd get a little studio apartment, turn off the air conditioner and open up the windows wherever I was, because I wanted the fresh air, and I sort of enjoyed the heat. And I gave my dad grief about how we're weak for enjoying the air conditioning. And when I told him we didn't have air conditioning, he says, "Weren't you complaining about that when you were growing up?" I'm like, "Yeah, and I can still tolerate the heat as long as I don't have to wear anything but a pair of shorts." And most of my patients appreciate me in a bow tie. I'm just saying.
Well, I have a great segue to that. The heat is one of the triggers that a lot of patients have who have multiple sclerosis.
Exactly. And I was surprised, I'm going through symptoms that are and conditions that we haven't covered yet, and we haven't covered multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that we have probably one of the best non-invasive, non-medicated solutions for multiple sclerosis.
You're
Solutions,
right.
Solution's a really strong word.
That
But
is.
but it's a word that I have many of my patients would agree with. It's probably one of the best ways to, what's the word I'm looking for? Manage, absolutely. And the reason that you end up managing multiple sclerosis is because we think it's an autoimmune disease. And I preface and I put an asterisk there next to think, because based upon what we're going to share today, I don't think it falls in a direct autoimmune situation.
I agree. Because the way it reacts, it's especially with what we do here.
Yes. And the way that people respond to the upper cervical work, it does not suggest that it is a purely autoimmune condition. But let's talk a little bit about MS. For people who are unfamiliar, I was going through a couple of different places, just refreshing my brain mostly more than anything else. And certainly a lot of problems. It's a lot of neurological stuff: pain, muscle spasms, bladder and bowel problems for a lot of them, cognitive symptoms, balance is another big one,
muscle weakness,
tingling and numbness with visual disturbances. All of these things are part and parcel to, in fact, I'm going to throw this list up real quick where's the share screen button?
We always have this problem.
Well, they changed up the stuff.
I think that makes us old when they change something and we can't handle it.
Well, maybe, but I think it's more.
If you can't adapt, you'll die.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that. All right, we're going to do this. And,
okay, I think I could see things. Yay.
Yes. So this is just a short list of signs and symptoms associated with multiple sclerosis, and how do you get diagnosed with multiple sclerosis? You go see a neurologist. They have some very specific tests, including an MRI, that starts showing white spots on your brain matter and your white matter. So that's the big stuff. And as you mentioned, heat is not a favorite condition or situation, especially summers, for people with multiple sclerosis.
No, it's not.
It often just makes all these symptoms, worse.
People will call that a trigger, or it makes them fearful of the summers a lot of times.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see.
It's funny because I have a couple of MS patients. I have several, but one in particular, she likes working in her basement during this time of the year.
Makes sense.
But then her and her husband moved down to Florida.
Ooh.
And she's down there all summer long.
In the summer? Ew.
All summer long in the heat. Quite honestly,
and they don't have basements in Florida.
They really don't. And she does great. Between myself, I've adjusted her. Dr. Julie Mayer Hunt has adjusted her, and she is currently with Dr. Lee Angle.
Yes, Lee, fantastic.
And he's been taking great care of her. And I don't think she's like, I'm walking well. She's, she has to use a walker, one of these rollator type things, but she gets along very well with that. And as long as we keep her in alignment, she does great. And it's not debilitating for her life.
So let's talk about real quick if you have a medical diagnosis of MS, what are they looking for?
So they're going to take an MRI of your brain, and they're going to be specifically looking for white spots, because what the autoimmune theory associated with multiple sclerosis is that the body is attacking the white matter. I want to make sure I'm saying that right, because it might be the gray matter, and I'm mixing them up. I'm seeing if there's something here. Central nervous system. Yes. I don't know why I want to say white matter, but that seems right. If I'm wrong, please somebody correct me, and I'm more than happy to be corrected on that.
Now that you say it, and my brain goes, Now, does anybody listening actually truly care? Maybe you do.
But there's going to be 5 of them out there, 5 people who are going to say, "You're wrong, Dr. Schurger." And I'm going to be like, yeah, I was.
At least you admitted it.
But it's central nervous system. And, basically what they're finding is they're finding these lesions in the brain tissue that is leading to all these other problems. Which is why for a lot of people, you were mentioning before we started the recording, you were mentioning that latitude makes a difference.
Which is interesting.
Right.
So the theory behind that is what latitude, again, if you're not thinking like, why are we talking about maps here? So like in the United States, the higher up you are, the more likely or the faster you will get symptoms of MS if you are prone to or going to get MS. And the study I looked at, it's like 2 years difference. And the reason is, again, according to this study, was that there is a correlation between vitamin D levels and symptoms of MS, which is really interesting because I also see that we kind of saw that during the pandemic too, is the cities and things that the people who didn't get a lot of sunshine, so they would have lower vitamin D naturally, like New York did a lot worse than big cities like in Florida per se. So, and it's not like, what's the difference there? And in my mind, I'm like, it's that sunshine.
Yeah. And in general, high levels of vitamin D. In fact, I had a patient come in and she's like, "Why do you think I need more vitamin D?" I told her she needed more vitamin D. And we took a new x-ray. I told her she needed more vitamin D and she needed more omega-3s.
Yep.
We all need more omega-3s, largely if we're carrying extra body weight along. That's going to help sort of tamper down the inflammation response that we're having. But her x-ray just didn't look as dense as previous ones, or her cone beam. And my brain says, let's put you on a little bit of extra vitamin D, because vitamin D is not a vitamin. It is a hormone.
Mm-hmm.
And it is probably one of the few external hormones that we can supplement with on a regular basis that will help. It's a prohormone for all the other hormones. So it is a basis and basic starting block for everything else. The higher your vitamin D levels are, especially, you want to make sure your vitamin Ds are at least over 50. But there is some speculation that vitamin D levels even higher than that, getting into the hundreds, the low hundreds, are even more neuroprotective, more immunoprotective. I mean, it is a basis for everything else in your nervous system in your body. And the higher levels you have, the better off you're going to be. Now,
so there is a chance, though, people could overdo it on vitamin D, though.
Maybe. Vitamin D, it's really hard. If you are getting a food-based, a lanolin-based vitamin D, I think you're going to be okay. There is some discussion whether or not that you can push it too high. But the question is what is too high? Because while the range on vitamin D still looks to be, and a lot of doctors will be like, "Oh, you're over 50, you should cut back." No, I'm
don't
confident.
think, 50 is still good. Like you could go higher.
And as the upper limit of vitamin D is suggested to be up into the 170s.
Really?
But I don't exactly, and that's that was from the lab testing that I got a couple of years back. Now, here's the thing: has anybody really tested an upper limit of vitamin D consumption to a toxic level? And the interesting thing is the body will self-regulate the vitamin D. So if it has too much, it will start flushing it out because it is so readily used. Even though it is an oil, it's still readily used, and your body will be able to self-regulate it pretty well. There is, what is a level, what is a symptom that you should be concerned about? I think it's constipation. And if you're constipated, take a look and maybe back off on, first drink some water. Then if that doesn't help, within a couple of days, back off on the vitamin D. But generally speaking, I don't think many people, most people are going to have a hard time getting enough vitamin D. And I think these higher levels are just unstudied at this point. But most people aren't going to be taking 30,000 IU of vitamin D like I do on a regular basis. And again, I'm taking it for some autoimmune stuff because it is helping those factors. For someone with MS, especially if you've got a lot of neurological factors, maybe some more vitamin D is a good idea. So,
okay, I'm just going to read off. Getting too much vitamin D can be harmful. Very high levels of vitamin D in your blood, greater than 375 nanomoles per liter or 150 nanograms per milliliter, can cause nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, confusion, pain, loss of appetite, dehydration, excessive urination and thirst, and kidney stones. So, but I honestly,
how do you get to that level? How do you get to that level?
You would have to
you have to work to it.
Yeah.
You really have to work to it. And one of the supplement reps that I've worked with over the years, he and I were talking back and forth several, a decade ago now, where they would use one vitamin D that was like every drop was like 2,000 IU of one from one brand. But as soon as you stop taking it, the levels would drop. So you'd see this increase right off the bat. And then as soon as you stop taking it, it would immediately decrease. So unless he had suggested that the standard process vitamin D, Cataplex D, would help stabilize that over the long term. And it's other cofactors. So that's one aspect of it. There was one other that was on the tip of my tongue as I was talking about this. Yeah, your body knows how to regulate vitamin D. I was taking, again, the study that looked at both psoriasis and vitiligo. I think it was vitiligo, not versicolor. Down in Brazil, they were giving something like 50,000 on a regular basis for over 6 months, and nobody
daily or weekly?
Daily.
Wow.
That was the other.
Because I know a lot of people, like if you are at your medical doctor and they happen to do a vitamin D test, which you have to fight for,
right?
They'll do 50,000 weekly to help get people.
And that was the other thought that I had. So thank you for refreshing my brain. So they were taking 50,000 daily, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been 35,000 IU, but it was somewhere.
No matter what, way more than most people.
It was way more, which is why I take 30,000. I don't worry about it. And they did that over the course of 6 months, and they had no adverse effects from taking the vitamin D. And 70% of the psoriasis folks got better, and I think about half of the vitiligo folks got better, which is still fantastic. But the interesting thing about uptake is, when you take that mega dose once a week, that 50,000 IU that they often teach, or they often prescribe, that 50,000 doesn't hit the bloodstream properly because the body doesn't know how to deal with it. You're better off taking 10,000 every day.
I agree.
And working yourself up to it. And then over time, your body can actually work up a store to get into that nanograms per deciliter. And I think, even mine, when I took mine, and it's been 3 years, I need to get new blood work. When I did mine, it was something like 110, 111, somewhere in that range. And I'd been taking that for, a couple of years at that point in time. So you can work up to, it takes a long time to get up into those really chronic, I'm going to have problems range. Because your body doesn't, your body says, oh, I see 50,000 IU. It doesn't absorb it properly. So that's what the literature is actually suggesting. So you're actually better off with a smaller high dose and working your way up to more.
Got it.
So
in general, what the studies have kind of shown with vitamin D is higher vitamin D levels could possibly maybe stop people from getting multiple sclerosis.
They're certainly protective to symptoms. And I think that's the better way to think about it more than anything else. You don't see the cases of MS further south as you do further north. And the same thing flips around in the southern hemisphere as you get further south.
Yep.
Again, less vitamin D. So there is a protective benefit that seems to be present with vitamin D dosing. So,
yeah. So some studies have shown that trauma, especially to the neck or back or whiplash, are somewhat related to MS diagnosis.
Absolutely.
And I think that is definitely the case with what I've seen in my office, especially like whiplash type injuries or concussion type injuries. Now, it's not like I get a whiplash and the next day I get MS. It's more like over the course of years, like 15 years ago, I had a terrible whiplash and now I've been diagnosed with MS.
Right.
And when people hear, they don't put that together because it's so far apart. But what we do is when we have our history in consultation with a patient, we find out what happened to them before. Now, can we say for sure that's definitely connected? No, I see a relationship, just like with Meniere's, and we see whiplash and Meniere's. So my question to you is, do you think the upper cervical subluxation is it the cerebral spinal fluid dynamics you think that's where, in your opinion, that's where it's happening?
I think that's absolutely what's happening. And Dr. Scott Rosa, who's up in Albany, New York, we've
talked about him before.
We have. And we showed, I think it was last week's episode, we were talking about the hydrocephalus book. Where we were getting into what he was looking at there. The cine studies. In fact, I've got a nice little article here talking about that. In fact, is he on this study? He's not, but let me pop over and let me show this article here, because this one's a really great. So the cine study here is great because what a cine study of cerebral spinal fluid flow is a motion study MRI, which is really cool. So what they'll do is they'll take a slice and then they'll record over time to basically see all the cerebral spinal fluid flow. And what they were finding here is that in these MS cases, there was a decreased cerebral spinal fluid flow in certain areas, in certain parts. And what Dr. Rosa has seen regularly is he's been doing these cine studies many weekends. I think he has his own neuroimaging center now. But
okay, let's break it down real quick.
Yeah.
And I'll let you continue to go.
Yep.
I'm confused. Cine study. What is that?
All right. So cine study is so you go into an MRI machine. And what they do is they set you up. They're going to look at like this narrow spot coming this way, right?
Okay. So like a thin slice down, like the center.
A thin slice down the middle is what they're looking, and they're going to record that over a period of time.
So cine is kind of like cinematic.
It is exactly
that's where that's coming from. It's a movie of your brain.
It's a short movie. So instead of taking a number of slices across to get a 3D image, we're taking a very narrow slice in the middle, so that way we can see the cerebral spinal fluid flowing as it's supposed to. As it's supposed to drop down the back of your spine or of your spinal cord and then come back up the front.
So cerebral spinal fluid, just to break this down for someone listening to it, that is the fluid that is kind of inside part of the brain, but also around the brain. And the brain sits in kind of like a cushion of fluid.
It floats.
So there's no air in there. Even though if you get called an airhead, you are not an airhead. It's floating in this fluid. And which is why, unfortunately, like shaken baby syndrome, when you shake a baby, their brain is going smash, 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 smash. And it
something
destroys.
Like that.
There's other stuff too, but
it's bad. Don't do it.
It's terrible. It breaks blood vessels. Babies
don't be in a
they will never
accident.
Be the same or die. And so and a terrible car accident or a fall can do similar things. Isn't like Liam Neeson's wife? I can't think of her name. She got into a skiing accident.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that happened to her. She broke. I mean, the broken blood vessels in the brain because of the brain sloshing around in the head.
Yeah.
So, but the brain is supposed to slosh around because it's protecting it. But the problem is what we're talking about here is that flow, the way that the body moves that fluid. It's not like, it doesn't have heart. It's not like pumping like blood, but the blood will increase the pressure of the brain when it pumps, and then it decreases when it goes out. So our brain is constantly swelling and getting smaller, just kind of like a pumping mechanism itself, and because of the blood.
It is absolutely a pumping mechanism. It's just not pumping with a heart. And
exactly.
And it is cerebral spinal fluid it's more than just the water holding the brain in place. It is actually nourishing the brain the way it's supposed to, but it is very viscous, much like water. And again, it's supposed to flow around. So these cine studies allow us to see these pulsating pictures. I might have a picture of it. I think I've shown it in the past where it's just sort of flowing around. I don't think I have one handy, but again, it's supposed to flow around. And what they were finding in these MS patients compared to people who are normal, there were spots where the cerebral spinal fluid didn't flow and didn't pulse the way it's supposed to. And they found that much more commonly in MS patients compared to, to a regular patient.
Just putting this out there, we'll also see similar things with a Parkinson's patient, with people who have dementia, ALS. We'll see it with like migraine patients even.
Right. So there are variations of this. And this is why what am I looking at? The autoimmune response of MS might not hold up, because what they find, what the suspicion is maybe what's actually happening is the cerebral spinal fluid, because it has nowhere to go, the pressure builds up. The pressure, when you have a non-compressible liquid, which is cerebral spinal fluid, blood, water, you can't compress it. You start putting pressure on it, it's got to go somewhere. Yep. And it will end up going into an area where it is the weakest. You're not going to go up against bone. You try to push liquid into a bone, it's not going to happen. Where is it going to go? It's going to go into that soft tissue of the brain. Yep. And this is where it ends up having, infiltration of the cerebral spinal fluid, and we start to see these white spots. Dr. Rosa he takes pre and post MRIs. He'll do these cine studies after adjusting a patient, and he'll do another one almost immediately after. And bear in mind, this is 30 minutes of a patient sitting in an MRI. They get adjusted, and then they're back into the MRI for another 30 minutes of these imaging. So it can take a very long time, and it's very taxing on the patient. What Dr. Rosa was finding within 30 minutes of an adjustment, those spots, those lesions, that infiltration of the cerebral spinal fluid into these various spots in the brain are gone. And he is very specific and meticulous about making sure that they are positioned exactly the same way they went into the machine the first time as they did the second time. So as best as possible, we are seeing something that suggests that these brain infarcts from cerebral spinal fluid disappear. The same lesions that we would consider an MS lesion are gone within 30 minutes after an adjustment. Now, I'm not saying this is the only causative thing going on with multiple sclerosis, but it does suggest that there is an improvement in the tissue that is allowing the body to heal. And maybe it's just simply a matter of getting the pressure off of those individual spots, and now the body can work the way it's supposed to. And in the case of, vitamin D, we know vitamin D has some neuroprotective benefits as well as some immune benefits. And if we can get that, if you have a better vitamin D level, maybe you aren't as prone to these spots hitting or to the cerebral spinal fluid pushing into that tissue as severely in some cases.
Or your body just doesn't react as badly to it.
Well, exactly.
But I bet if we could psychically know that this person was going to get MS, but they have good vitamin D and good health and good, they work out and they do all the right things, but we knew that they were going to get it, and we took an MRI. I bet we would still see some of that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's just not causing symptoms yet.
Right.
So where I think, just like I've said on other things, where I think upper cervical just is so successful with this is if we catch it early. If someone has just started getting the symptoms of MS. Now, I'm not saying I have seen many patients that have had advanced MS, but I don't see the miraculous type of results that I do with someone who's only had it for a year, or only been diagnosed for a year, because we know that this has been going on long term.
Yeah.
Like I can think of one of my patients who she wasn't flared up when I met her, but she came in and she just knew that she wanted care. But she knew every summer she flares up. And so we got her started. I think it was, fall or winter when we got her started under care. And we got, through in the initial phase of care, she was holding adjustments relatively well. We were seeing her like on a monthly basis. We got all the way through the summer into the fall again. And she did not have one flare up over the summer. And, to me, I hadn't really realized how much of a big deal that was to her, but she'd never not had that for many years.
Wow.
And so, come now, 3, 4, 5 years later, and she's still has not had a flare I think she moved on me. So I think something happened, and she's gotten a new upper cervical doctor in Indiana, but but she did, at least under my care, she didn't have a flare.
Well, good.
Which is really good.
And
but now she did get back under care, which is good. But and one of the other things I wanted to bring up is the difference why we don't know why, but why more men or more women it's about 50% more women than men get MS. And I don't know why. Do you have any ideas of why that would happen?
And again, I think it would come down to the structural strength of the ligament tissue, the density of the ligament tissue in the neck. Because this, and I've got up right now for those who are watching at home, the Cine study of how. Yeah,
if you're seeing this on YouTube or video form, what I'm seeing is the center of the patient. It's a tiny slice down the center of the patient.
Yep. So the nose is
through the nose to the back of the head.
Yep.
And it looks like on the right side, I'm seeing just the flow of cerebral spinal fluid. Like every time it pumps, it's going down like it's supposed to.
Yeah, there's a pulse you see on the right, and it's all the way around the cord. So
both sides.
Yeah, and it's sort of goofy because I don't like the fact that it's just got like white noise, static in the background. But that's that's whatever they decided to do. But you can see on the one on the right, which is normal, our normal healthy volunteer. You've got this nice pulsing all the way through, but with the MS case here on the left, you don't. It's
there is some. It's not like this person's head's about to explode, right?
Yeah, but it's very irregular.
So I would say like is it hydrocephalus? Is that one of the?
Well, hydrocephalus.
Hydrocephalus. So I'd say subclinical hydrocephalus, right? So it's not to the point where this person needs a stent.
No. And this gets into one of the thoughts, when we start going back to what is going on in the brain as far as fluid dynamics. You have 3 fluids that are playing back and forth. You have the oxygenated blood, which is arterial blood. You have the venous blood, which is deoxygenated, and then you have the cerebral spinal fluid flow. And again, the two drive the other to create a pulse for the cerebral spinal fluid. But all 3 of them have to move in their coordinated efforts. And if something isn't sitting where it's supposed to be, now you have an increased cerebral spinal fluid, and now you have other problems. And getting to the point that we were making earlier about where does it hit in the neuro tissue. If it hits more in the spinal cord, we call that Lou Gehrig's disease. If it hits more in the brainstem around the pons, that might be a Parkinson's hitting around the red nucleus. Is red nucleus? Yes. Or is it
Parkinson's,
or is it substantia
nigra? Yeah,
that's it.
Substantia nigra.
All right, I knew it was one of those two. And then if it's in the brain tissue higher up, it's multiple sclerosis. So it's all a matter of where is the pressure problem and where is the pressure gradient imbalance that might be leading to the symptom profile that the patient is experiencing. And it may all be the same thing. So, but getting back to putting a stent in, as you put it, there was a study several years ago, actually it's this one here, that back in 2011, this Italian researcher by the name of Zamboni had this grand idea that he was seeing that there was an insufficiency of cerebral spinal fluid or cerebral spinal venous flow. And he was basically finding that, MS patients had an increased cerebral spinal fluid venous flow insufficiency. So they weren't the venous flow.
Cerebrospinal venous okay, got it. I just wanted to
I know it's
what are those words meaning?
It's a mouthful, but it's all the venous flow out of the brain.
So it's the flow of the blood that's already been used.
Yes.
Going out of the brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he decided he had this grand idea that he was going to put a stent in to help improve venous outflow of the brain. The problem is twofold. One, the venous flow is always a low pressure flow all the way up into the brain. So it would be, the question is where does that stent need to be? Does the stent need to be in the brain or does it need to be further on down? He ended up putting his stent when he was doing these studies and doing his research down towards the lower neck. Was
he doing these on humans?
I believe he had some human volunteers. Yes.
Okay.
But a stent in a vein is not a.
I know, but
as studies go, it's probably one of the lower risk. But still, people are desperate, and sometimes you need to have some human volunteers. But he was putting it way down low in an area where it wasn't making the effect.
Yeah.
Some of his colleagues got together with some of our upper cervical colleagues over there, and Dr. Sandro Mandolisi and Marseca here. They were working with upper cervical doctors, and they were looking at cerebral spinal, again, the same cerebral spinal venous insufficiency, and they found many of them were related to where the atlas is actually causing stress and pressure on the venous, the jugular vein coming out of the skull, much higher up. So right at the atlas. So
there's another syndrome thing called Eagle syndrome, right?
Yes.
And so it's when we got the styloid, which is like right behind your ear. There's like a little bone that pops down and it connects to the front of your neck. It shouldn't be bone, but what happens with Eagle syndrome is it's turned to bone. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if there's a correlation between those people. And they may have like an elongated process because that could put pressure because the two could be right next to each other.
It shouldn't, because I don't think the jugular sits more along the spine, and that eagle.
That's more the carotid.
It's more anterior. No, even the carotid's sitting against the spine.
Well, we'll have to look that up because
we'll have to double check on that. Because there's a lot of questions as to how much calcification is there. We see a lot of them, but I don't think that's...
Sometimes they're really big.
Sometimes they are really big.
Whew.
But in any case, I don't think that's what's going on.
That's not it. So it's not there. So then
no. So what Mandolisi and Marquesa. Anyways,
okay.
Well, the two docs working with one of our upper cervical docs was finding that the rotation of the atlas, how the atlas and the axis were turned, and sometimes that's just a little bit of a motion, back and forth, would cause enough pressure, to suggest that a misalignment of the C1, C2 vertebrae might be actually causing stress on that jugular vein, preventing normal flow. Again, this is something we see oftentimes on MRIs as we're looking at them, that suggests that something is causing pressure on a jugular vein, because again, jugular is low pressure. You can push on an artery and you can feel some push back. On a vein, like there's that nice little artery right there that tends to pop on a lot of people. You can oftentimes feel that one. On a vein, you push on it and you will start cutting off blood flow pretty quickly, because it doesn't take a lot of pressure.
They're thinner walls.
They're thin walls. They don't have the blood pressure, the same pressure as a artery does. So that was one of their theories. And then they started testing that with other cases, both with improvements by getting an upper cervical adjustment, and seeing how patients did, and they were seeing lots of great improvements. So we saw a statistical significance with some sort of rotation of the x-rays in these MS cases. And is this the one here? Yeah, so they basically found encouraging information to basically suggest that correcting of a atlas or axis adjustment would actually lead to an improvement in the cerebral spinal fluid venous insufficiency. So cerebral spinal venous insufficiency. I said fluid earlier.
It's not the CSF. Which we talked about that. That is part of it too. So what we're saying is there could be multiple things happening when there's an upper cervical subluxation. It's not just cerebral spinal fluid flow, which is really important, but there could be actual pressures that are happening within the neck outside of the nervous system, causing the brain not to allow the brain isn't pushing the blood or able to push the blood as fast as it should out. So it's getting a backup.
Yeah. Okay. And in fact, they're basically pointing to the internal jugular veins having some sort of compression that basically causes a backup. Okay. And it's pieces and parts. It's not all one thing.
I don't think so.
That leads to a case of multiple sclerosis. But as you have all these pieces and parts, and if you are the person who has that perfect situation, you may end up with your cerebral spinal fluid not working the way it's supposed to, and then you have a backlog and you can't flush out all the garbage. The garbage collectors go on strike for a month. You're going to have a bunch of junk, and you're going to have stuff that you don't want, and rats after a short period of time.
Got to bring rats into it. Gross.
Well, they had to come from
the bubonic plague.
Exactly. So that's what I've got. I think, and we've seen good results with MS cases. This is not my favorite study, but I'll share it real quick. This was a study that Dr. Aaron Elster had published several years ago. I believe, do we have a date on this? This was back from 2004, where she was looking at multiple sclerosis and a batch of multiple sclerosis patients and a batch of Parkinson's patients.
Oh, yeah, and I remember this one.
She was finding, she found really good improvement, symptomatic improvement, and decrease in progression for both the MS patients at 91% and 92% for the Parkinson's patients. The reason this isn't my favorite study is because this should be two studies, in my opinion. I don't know why she put it all together as one.
If we think about it, though,
they're connected.
Both of them they are connected. There is a connection.
Right. But quite honestly, this would be better as two studies. One that says they could be identical completely. One that says Parkinson's and one that says multiple sclerosis, because then studies like this, and this happened to be in a chiropractic journal, so this is great rah for chiropractors. But if I was going to publish, something like this, and I had this cohort, I would want to publish it in a public PubMed journal, so that medical doctors can see it if they're searching for it, and the ones who are looking for multiple sclerosis see it, and the ones who are looking for Parkinson's see it separate. Because those are two different neurologists. I hate to say it.
I get it.
The world we live in.
It's been almost 20 years since the study was done,
exactly.
So it's time. It's time for us to do it again.
It is. It absolutely is. So, it's got a lot of great data. I mean, she's got tons of stuff as far as what the injury of trauma was. Goes down the list of symptoms that they were having. We just need to do another study very much like this. So, but this, at the end of the day, we see these MS patients, we see these Parkinson's patients. I'm sad to say I have not had a Lou Gehrig's patient come in yet. But I'd love to see one and see if I can help them out, because the mechanism is consistent, that there's something wrong in the upper cervical that is preventing either venous flow to work properly or cerebrospinal fluid flow to work properly, or that there's some other combination of stressors in and around the brainstem that's preventing their body from functioning.
And the same thing with the ALS. I have had 2 patients with ALS come in. And but they always find me last. They're already in a wheelchair. They already have a BiPAP machine. And they're it's. If we could, who knows where we?
Why do we have to be the last one?
Why do we have to be last? And that's why we're doing this podcast. Share this information so people can, when they're searching, when they're desperate for searching for answers for a loved one or for themselves, that they find this first rather than last, because it breaks my heart that it's already so far gone when we see a lot of people.
Because the 2 new patients I had today, the one has, she had 3 different MRIs. And I think those were just the 3 that she thought were the biggest. And the 2 were recent, and one was an old upright. And as I looked at, I quickly scanned over the reports to see if what I just had saw that was sticking out like a sore thumb was in any of the reports, and it wasn't. There was a Chiari 5 millimeters, which is a Chiari 1. On at least one of her MRIs. I didn't go digging further, but
did they see it on the MRI when they first?
No mention of it. No one's looked at it.
And that was also, that MRI was done laying down then, because
it was.
It's probably much worse if she was doing a upright MRI.
Potentially. It's funny because I've seen it switch a little bit, but it's definitely not helpful when they're, if you can get an upright as well, oftentimes you see it more severe. But she was 5 millimeters laying down, and nobody made a note of it. And I saw it like immediately. Of course, my brain goes right to that.
Of course.
But with her symptom profile, she's got some Meniere's, she's got some weird neurological stuff. I'm like, you are a perfect candidate for upper cervical work. Aside from the fact that she decided when she was 3 years old to jump off the monkey bars into a frozen sand pit at 3 years old. So maybe it started back then, and then she's had all these problems. And then, 20 months ago, she starts having Meniere's severe. This other gentleman, he fell off a mountain, literally. He was training in the military, and he takes one step incorrectly and literally just rolls down the entire hill. He's at the top of the ridge, and the next thing he knows, he's broken ribs, he's got cactus, and he's hit boulders, and he's just a mess. And he's been feeling like this for close on 20 years now, almost 30 years now. And then all of a sudden in January, he starts having Meniere's symptoms full on. He gets a medical doctor down the road, a neurologist, who basically says, well, there's nothing we can do for Meniere's. You're just going to have to take some, cut back on your salt. And if that doesn't help, I'm going to give you a dietary pill. And I'm like, the meclizine wasn't touching stuff.
No.
He comes in like this. I mean, I kid you not. His left eye is completely, it's like it's open, but it's not open.
Yep.
And I adjust him and I sit him up. His eyes are as wide as mine. His both eyes were open even. And I'm like, dude, we're on the right path. I'm confident. So some patients are going to respond fast. Some people are going to take a little bit of time. My TN case today, she's been dealing with this for a bit.
It's going to take some time.
It's going to take
those nerves are on fire right now.
Yeah, and they haven't had proper nutrition coming through that cerebral spinal fluid, because it goes to every nerve. Not only is it bathing every, the brain and the brainstem, or the brainstem spinal cord, but it goes out to every nerve in the body, all the way down to our fingers and our toes, and then it goes back. So it takes time. These healing processes do not happen overnight, as much as I wish they did.
Yeah, me too. But
then I'd have hair.
And we might have, I don't know. I feel like we would have more patience, but less patience at the same time. They would get one adjustment and they'll be like, we're good. And I'll be like, good.
Well, we just charge more.
That's true. Oh, I know. I had a patient. I happened to answer the phone. My front desk was busy with another phone call, and I was sitting at my desk, and he called, and he's not a patient yet, but he broke his neck in 1980. Oof. And I was like, how long has this been going on? He's like, well, I broke my neck in 1980. And I was like, well, that's so a little while, like 40 years. And he's been to multiple chiropractors. The last chiropractor he was at, it was really rough. So it was the conventional type of adjustment. Yeah. And he said, the first time it was good. After that, it hurt me. And I was like, well, you called the right place. We are very gentle and really precise. But he didn't make an appointment because he wanted to get adjusted today. And I said, first of all, the fact that I have one appointment available at 5 o'clock, and I never have an appointment at 5 o'clock. I was like, you could totally get in today, but you will not get adjusted to the next week. Yeah. And the reason we do that is because it takes us so long to look at the images and put everything together. It's not like, oh, I see it right away, let's just get it adjusted. No. It's not. We don't eat lunch. We don't take lunches. We are sitting in front of computer screens looking at your images.
By the way, today, if I'm sounding, and today's and last week's as well, both, if people are like, Dr. Schurger sounds off and he's repeating words and not, I did not eat lunch today. I only had coffee and a couple of meat sticks. And last time I was purposely fasting, and I really hope my wife thawed something out for dinner, because I forgot to.
You can just eat eggs.
No, I'm out of eggs.
Oh no.
I know, I ran out because I didn't know how long they were going to last in the coolers when we lost power. So yeah. And I do have some beef liver, and I might just eat a pound of beef liver.
Great. Talk to everyone about your beef liver, because that's what everyone wants to hear.
Exactly.
But in general, why most of us can't give you an adjustment on the first day you come in is because it takes time up for us. It's not just whack 'em, crack 'em. We're just going to move some bones. We are very precisely moving bones. So when you schedule with us, we set time aside to, first of all, get your imaging done and get everything looked at. But that second appointment is really important too, so we can show you what we found and get you your first adjustment done. So we can't rush the process, and hopefully he'll call later because it sounds like he needs us. But
and it's the other part of that rushing the process is you need to have that rest after that adjustment, because you don't know what the body's going to go through.
Yeah,
you just need to take it easy. In fact, if you felt 100% better after your first adjustment, you might want to take it the next weekend or week easy, because your body has not fully healed from all of those symptoms. I still remember a patient of Dr. Hall's. He had torticollis, so he's got his head stuck to his shoulder. He gets one adjustment, standing up straight, no problems. And Dr. Hall's told him to take it easy. He goes out, they're out, it's LA. They go hop on a boat, and he's like one of these double-decker boats, and he jumps off the upper deck.
Of course he does.
Into the ocean. And as he's getting out of the water, his head is stuck to his shoulder again with the torticollis. He's like, well, that's all right. Dr. Hall put me back into place. I've been dealing with this for 20 years. Dr. Hall can never get him as clear as that first time, because something else got damaged that wasn't able to come back. So take it easy.
It's really important. It's not the time to start a new workout after your first adjustment.
But okay, one more funny aside.
Okay.
Another new patient who started a couple of weeks ago. Her mom's been a patient forever, and the daughter's finally like, I don't want surgery for my TMJ. I need to do something. Dr. Schurger's going to fix me. So we sit, we talk. She likes me. She's like, hey, all right, you're going to be my doc. I'm good with that. She was last Wednesday. She comes in worst pain. She feels worse than, as bad or worse than when she came in a couple weeks earlier. And she's pulling an inch short, folks. Again, half an inch is plenty off. You don't have to come in at an inch.
And he's talking about leg lengths, by the way.
But an inch off for her legs. And if she's 5'4", I'd be surprised. She comes in, lots of pain. I get her adjusted. She's feeling better. And then the next day, I get a call from her mom saying, what did you do to my daughter? She decided to take a day off work. She never takes days off work. And she just basically said, no, I'm too tired. I need the time to heal. And we chatted and joked about it here tonight. She's like, nope, I just needed that day. I feel so much better. And she was holding her adjustment today. So Beautiful. That's exactly what we want to hear.
Yeah. The holding is healing. That's what we want. We want you. Yep. We don't want to have to adjust you every time you come in. So don't screw up your adjustment.
And one of the things that your parasympathetic nervous system, the side of your nervous system that does all the healing, will also do is it will put you to sleep.
Oh yeah.
That's
some of the best sleep after getting an adjustment.
It really is. It really is.
So good.
And we are approaching our sleep time because I'm old.
Well, let's wrap it up.
I'm old and I'm hungry. So, all right, Dr. Bagley, where do they find you?
I am in St. Louis, Missouri. You can find me at precisionchiropracticstl.com.
Wonderful. I'm in Springfield, Illinois. Keystone Chiro, SPI, KeystoneChiroSPI.com on all the socials as well. Like you
share our podcast, please, and write reviews and good reviews, please.
Yeah,
maybe not about this podcast.
No. Yeah, that again. I need to get some food because we have both hit that slap happy stage where we are past where we should be. Anyways, folks, look forward to another great episode of The Blonde and the Bald. We will be back in a week. Have a good one.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed today's show with Drs. Bagley and Schurger, remember, don't give up and just live with the pain. Come back next week and get more answers and solutions. Visit our websites at KeystoneChiroSPI.com and PrecisionChiropracticSTL.com for more info. And catch all the episodes of The Blonde and the Bald.